First pass.
That's it.
Now, sure you don't want to ask him from this? I can.
Yeah, see, Mark, you could ask. That might be
because then you'll
eye contact.
truly be reacting. There's not that. I keep thinking that like he'll ask the question where what's that? The dog Santa's little helper. The episode where they introduce him.
Yeah.
And he's on the racetrack. And in the original version's on the racetrack, and there's a female dog ahead of him, and he mounts the dog and starts, you know.
So they have fun with it, essentially.
Yeah, and Bart and Lisa goes, "What's he doing? It looks like he's trying to pass her, but he can't." They had to cut that out.
This is cool.
Yeah.
Well.
Okay, Jeff.
All right. Well, Kurt, I guess I don't want to do that. Yeah, just to want to.
You can refer to my name, Mark, if you want. If that helps.
Sounds good. Well, I'm Jeff Holland. I come from Boulder, Colorado, and my first visit out here was about 1993, I think. And I came out with a friend of Mark's, Dave Moore, that he'd gone to college with, and I'd heard all about Mark and knew what he was going to be like before I actually even met him, which was kind of fun because he wasn't anything like what I thought he was going to be. And I'd heard about this house, and it was kind of a communal scene a little bit, but my idea of communal and what I saw when I came here were very different things. It was kind of, my expectations were it's just like a bunch of people living in a house and they somehow tolerate each other and try to respect a little bit without getting in each other's way or making too much noise, that kind of stuff. Because I lived with guys in college and we even had shared meals and that kind of stuff. So it was fun. I got here and we kind of had a fun night meeting Mark and seeing what was going on. I was in San Francisco for the first time, and gosh, I think probably since 1974, it was the last time I'd been out here, so there's about 20 years difference. And I'd come out as a little kid, 15 years old, hitchhiked with a friend of mine who his parents had moved to San Jose. So I knew that they were going to be down there. We decided we were going to explore America and come across from Boston and see what was going on. It took us a month to come out to San Francisco. So I came out here and it was like, holy cow, this is nothing like what I thought it was like. And this is 1974, so it's not like it was in the 60s, late 60s, kind of the idealized time to be here. It was pretty grungy and crummy. And Berkeley looks like it does today. It was just as seedy and seamy as it is now. So anyway, yeah.
Jeff, can we start over? And,
yeah, sure. Are you running this one?
I just turned it on, but I want you to, I really need that starting chapter.
You got it.
Okay. Is Dave Moore the sculptor?
Yeah, he's the sculptor.
Okay, the guy that did that. Okay, I met him one time.
And we'll explain it. All right, and give it a second, and we'll start.
Yeah.
Well, I'm Jeff Holland, and I'm sitting in Mark's room. I'm from Boulder, Colorado. Mark's room is not. This is February 16th, post-Valentine's Day. And I'm just kind of relaxing here and want to remember some of the times and fun that I've had in this house. So I guess I have a couple stories to tell about some of the things that I've seen here. And it's kind of a real comfortable place to come. Boulder is a smaller city than San Francisco. And San Francisco could be pretty intimidating for kind of a guy like myself. I grew up in rural areas and there's a lot of people here. But it's kind of, there's some things here that I always thought they represented kind of style living, communal living, as in the sense of Mark's place and how everybody's worked. Got to say, I had my preconceived ideas about what I thought I was walking into the first time. I'm a friend of Dave Moore's, and I had heard all about Mark. The first time I'd heard about Mark, I thought, God, it sounds pretty cool. These guys were college roommates, and they did a lot of stuff. Dave has a couple films. They have one where they're dressed up in a monkey suit in a bar, and it's a great little short film, and I had seen that, and I thought, well, if Mark was part of this whole scene, he's got to be a cool guy. So Dave said, well, you should come. I was planning on going to San Francisco, and he said, you should come and join us here. And I'm kind of like, well, Mark doesn't know me. This won't be a cool thing. And it turned out to be a lot of fun. We hit it off and talked about a lot of different stuff. And we all share kind of the underling artist, somebody who's working real hard, trying to get somewhere, and maybe we'll never get somewhere. But, it's just fun. Everybody's observant about things. Kind of seems like a good thing. So, you can only go so long. All right, well, we'll start again here with something else.
That's fine.
Well, my first visit to the house here, I grew up, kind of thinking that there were some ideals about San Francisco. And my first visit coming to San Francisco was in 1974. And I came out here with a friend of mine. We were both 15. We hitchhiked from Boston. His parents were moving out to San Jose, and we knew we had a place to go. So that gave us kind of a little safety and also an expectation that we would arrive. And it took us a month to get to San Francisco, which is a long time. In retrospect, the world is a different place now. I don't think I would do that now. But it was fun, and we met lots of people. I actually moved to Colorado as a base of the reason that I had moved there was I had seen some beautiful things in the Boulder area and thought that's where I wanted to be. And this is before Boulder grew as well. So anyway, coming to San Francisco was fun. I had a grandmother that lived in Emeryville. She's kind of a trip. She's 91 now, and she had worked as a waitress most of her life. She worked at the Fairmont Hotel, which is kind of a fancy place. She took me there, showed me the sights. We went to Sausalito. She was real good about making sure I saw all the standard tourist stuff. And I have pictures of myself with her on Fisherman's Wharf and a lot of that kind of stuff. But it wasn't very exciting. So I had to go off on my own, and I explored Berkeley. I had heard all about this. I wondered if maybe I'll go to school out here. It's really cool. Then I saw Berkeley. It was a seedy place even in 1974 compared to what it is now. It was really kind of the armpit of the world, like what would happen when you put lots of people together and let it all go to hell. It's all trashed out, and lots of transients and street trolls and people that were trying to get money from me. And as a kid, I didn't have any money to give anybody, but I would have, because it's kind of from rural area. I grew up in the country, and I didn't really know, kind of the hard life, I guess, part of the city stuff, because as a kid I just never been to cities. And San Francisco is not a tough city to come to comparatively to like New York or Philadelphia. So it was fun. When I was first out here, I had this idea about the 60s and communal living and thought all these great things were happening. In 1974, none of that was going on. It didn't look like that, and it was kind of post-revolution take over the world. So that was my last visit to San Francisco for 20 years, and I came in 1993, I think it was, and met Mark. All this was set up. It was kind of fun. It was set up as Dave said, well, I'm going to be out there. I had planned to come out because I wanted to see some art and some of the poster stuff that I'm interested in. And I came out here and kind of had my preconceived ideas about what Mark was going to be like. I knew all this stuff from the films. The film he had worked on, and Dave Moore had told me about some of the college music stuff. I expected a really different person than Mark turned out to be, but the Mark that I met was actually a lot cooler than who I thought he was going to be. And this is pandering to the audience. Stop. All right. So anyway, I'll sit for a second. What I had expected when I met Mark was I had thought he would be a lot more outgoing in some ways and a wild man. And instead, he turned out to have a lot of reserve to him, and it takes a while to understand that he has the same kind of a wry sense of humor and a warped, cynical perspective of the world. Yeah. He's a cynical optimist is what he is, actually, which is a tough thing to be. You have to really work at it. But so I got to this house, and I'm coming up the steps, and I really thought it was kind of a nice neighborhood. It's pretty cool. You're real close to the Haight, which I still thought was a cool scene, even though I don't know nowadays. I don't know if it is or not. But so I was all excited, and met Mark. We stayed up real late, and we were all drinking wine and talking about all kinds of stuff. And the house itself, I kind of in college I had lived with roommates. We had a house, and we cooked together. I kind of knew, at least my idea of communal living was you have to tolerate and respect people, and you try not to step on them. So that's what I thought I was walking into. But this place was really different. There was stuff here that was more structured than I had expected, I guess. For example, at the sink they had sponges, and there was a little note there that said, pink is for the sink and yellow is mellow, something like that. But there were two sponges, and you weren't supposed to use one for cleaning the dishes. You were supposed to use one only for rinsing stuff once it had been rinsed. And I went, wow, that's almost I lost it. Okay, so I'm totally off the wall in terms of my assessment of people, and there's like my judgments and things are totally crock.
Oh no, that's how I am too. My first impressions are always wrong. try never to trust them because I can never tell. Yeah, no, I know what you're talking
And,
about.
well, and it's also, I don't like hurting people, but I say things that are terrible. I don't want Ellie or anybody here to feel like there's like something I shouldn't say.
Yeah, like when you call them a cynical optimist, how rude!
Well, and
Oh,
that,
that's fine. I'm good.
that's detail.
Um,
Go.
anything that's bad will be cut out. You don't need to worry.
Good.
Don't worry.
I'll have a 30-second spot. Well, when I first came out to the house, are we running? Sorry.
Yeah.
Duh.
So you're gonna go into the
Yeah.
the sponges?
Yeah, and I'm
Yeah,
gonna leave
just-
there. I'll
Okay.
I'll redo some of the communal stuff.
Mhm.
Well, when I first came out to the house here, Dave Moore had told me a little about the communal living kind of setup, and it sounded pretty cool because San Francisco, that's the kind of thing you do. And when I went to college, I'd had a bunch of roommates. We had a nice house, and we cooked together. Had vegetarians and normal people considered of each other's use of pans. Lots of that kind of stuff went on. So it's kind of fun because I learned that a bunch of guys can tolerate each other and still respect some of the stuff and live like that. So it's kind of fun. I expected the same kind of thing here to some degree. When I got here, the house was beautiful, cool neighborhood, kind of a nice place. And you realize that people that live here are fortunate that they have a lot of activity and a lot of places they can go. So I got into the house and kind of got settled in. We sat up late, drank a lot of wine, and talked to pretty much the wee hours, and realized this was going to be a fun trip, good introduction to the whole scene. So I headed out, bathroom, came back in, and I think there was something about the sink. There was a sponge there. There was a sign that said pink for the sink, yellow is mellow, something like that. And I was like, wow, it's kind of totalitarian. I didn't realize that people, you had to have those kind of rules in order to live together and function. And I'm the kind of guy that would use the pink sponge to wash out the dirty dishes just to do something I shouldn't do. And I did. Anyway, I looked at that and I was kind of, well, that's kind of interesting. And I noticed another thing that's kind of odd, but I'm into sustainability and recognize the need to not waste stuff, but no one flushed the toilets here. They had it gets really yellow, and then eventually it's like, I thought, well, it's going to smell, I better flush it. But I hope no one hears me flush it, because if they hear me, they're going to get pissed. And so I'm very much aware of the fact that I'm a guest here, and you shouldn't make fun of any of the style, the way people live. Everybody works out how they do that, and you definitely, when you have different ages and different kinds of people living together, I guess you need rules. And they had a chalkboard where they put them up. There were rules about closing the door and not closing it too loud. It makes sense at 3 in the morning, but maybe it's all day long. Maybe somebody's napping. So I didn't know. I kind of took these things with a grain of salt, kind of got a kick out of it. And I know people didn't have any intentions of controlling anybody else's life, but it looked like it. Oh, God, stop. I'm going to go to jail. Well, it was kind of fun coming here, and we stayed up pretty late, drank a bunch of wine, and talked, and we realized that we did hit it off. We're all kind of the starving artists, wishing that we were, not starving artists is stupid, it's, we're all underachievers who wish we could achieve. So we were kind of just hanging out, and it was kind of getting late, and God, I heard 2 people who I just had met. I couldn't even remember their names because I'm not real good at first. And they were arguing over a sponge, something in the kitchen there. I was like, what's going on here? They're talking about this, like somebody used the pink sponge. They had a rule, if it's pink, it's for the sink. If it's yellow, it's mellow. I didn't even get it, what was going on, but there was a little note that said what you were supposed to do and what you weren't supposed to do. And I didn't know this at the time. I heard these guys arguing over if somebody had used the wrong sponge, and I was like, oh geez, it's kind of like a totalitarian, like a total control kind of thing going on here. And God, somebody's really pissy about this. So I asked Mark about that, and I went into the kitchen, and sure enough, on the sink, there's a rule for this, how to use the sponges. And they had this blackboard. It had a couple things written on it. I can't remember what they were. Can't remember much.
Can you remember any of the arguments?
Yeah. Let me think on this one.
Place it so that you're in the next room doing something as a guest of Mark. You're just hanging out, and they're in the kitchen, not knowing you're there.
Mm-hmm.
That's, and then you hear them starting to argue about the sponges and who used what sponge for or however it went. And if anything you can remember about that argument, you don't have to. If you can remember what they said, it's great.
Oh man, it's.
But if you can't, just give us in the strongest sense that you can, the flavor of the argument.
Prompt me. We can have a little bit of like embroidered reality here. What do you think the argument was?
Well, someone used the wrong sponge and didn't care.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That's what I needed. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, what happened? I came here and we were just sitting around and we talked. We were drinking wine and I think we were just taking a little break and kind of. I was relaxing. I was reading the Guardian or Chronicle, trying to figure out if there were any cool shows that I wanted to see. Just kind of first time sitting back, and I don't know. And we were getting ready. We were going to head out and get something to eat, and somebody was in the kitchen, and it sounded like an argument. I wasn't sure whether they were actually pissed or they were just kind of raised voices. But one of the guys there, kind of a character guy. Later I learned Larry was. He'd used a sponge, and somebody else was yelling at him, saying that you used the wrong sponge, and he was miffed a little bit. It's like, so what difference does it make if you use the pink sponge instead of the yellow sponge? I didn't think there was a problem either. I'm like, God, that's kind of control freak to want to do that. And I asked Mark about it. I didn't really, I'm new to the household, and I didn't want to get anybody mad at me, but I almost took a side there. It's like, wow, does this make a difference? And so I looked in the kitchen, and there was this little note by the sink, and it says, how to use your sponge. Yellow is mellow. And I can't do this a third time, Mark. I have to fill this. It is hard to do this.
Well,
I don't mind.
The rest of them won't.
Great.
The rest of them won't be like this.
Yeah,
I hope.
well, part of it is trying to make sure it reflects reality. When this one, it's like it's been told. Are we ready?
Yeah.
I always have to ask that. I was sitting in the couch, taking a minute here, just kind of relaxing. I knew we were heading out to eat, and it was late. Kind of, every time you come out, it takes time to get settled in. And there was this argument going on in the kitchen, and I didn't really understand what was going on. It's kind of, they were arguing over who used the sponge wrong. It was a guy and a girl, and well, you used the pink sponge to clean up your dirty dishes, and I guess they had a rule, pink is sink and yellow is mellow, something like that, but it was like these guys had taken a big deal and turned it into a discussion. The girl that was in there, I subsequently learned her name was Ellie, and she's a real nice person, but she was telling this older guy that he didn't really care. He didn't respect the household rules, and they had an agreement. It sounded like they'd had a town hall meeting or something over how to use sponges here. And there was a note. I went in there and I looked, and there was a note on the sink, and the note says pink for sink, yellow is mellow. And I looked at this and I went, God, that's a lot of control stuff here. But the girl, she felt strongly, I guess, that they had agreed they had to. You have to respect each other's style for living. And I actually thought there might be a cleanliness thing, like it might be something to do with whether the sponge was sanitary. I was reading something, I think it was like hints for Heloise, and the dirtiest utensil in your house is your sponge in the sink. There's more germs per square inch in a sponge than there are in any other piece of household equipment. And it's a fact. So maybe Ellie was right. You shouldn't cross your sponges. All right, that's good. All right.
That's great. I did not know this. Hints from. Sorry.
You got to give your viewers something
I
to
have
go
to hear
on.
more about this.
Tell us about where you live in Boulder.
Okay, yeah, that's it. All right, well, I live in Boulder, Colorado. I've been out there ever since this trip hitchhiking out. I'd seen this place. It's really cool. There's mountains, and it's nice. And it's 40th parallel, so you have this deal where you have winters, but they kind of go away because of the jet stream. And even in the deep of winter, you'll get a day that's 50 degrees. It's a really beautiful place to live. People go from there to San Francisco. It's like the next logical step, it seems. You have to get to a bigger, larger life, or larger than that. I don't know. Try it. I'll run that again. You're going to end up with a lot of junk here, Mark.
No, it's all editable.
Everything is editable. Well, I live in Boulder, and Boulder's a pretty cool town. I've been out there since 1975, and it's a really beautiful city. It's on the 40th parallel. It means that in the winters they have the jet stream moves back and forth, and sometimes it's really cold, hard winter, and then next day it'll be 55 degrees and the sun's there. So it's really pretty. I work for a place called Open Space. City of Boulder's Open Space has about 30,000 acres around the city. And what happened was in '67, the taxpayers voted to control all the land and growth around the city. And the idea was that they knew at one point that this beautiful place would be spoiled. So by thinking in advance, they were able to purchase a big donut around the city and block any development. And now, I've worked for this agency for almost 12, 13 years. Now we're starting to see that the idea of controlling growth doesn't necessarily result in the desirable aspects that people predict. We're finding all kinds of things with basically the wealth in the city and the kind of housing prices are equivalent to San Francisco right now. And a nice place costs, if you want to rent a house, it's $2,400 a month, $3,000 a month. The little apartments they can be $1,800 a month for 2-3 bedrooms. So it's very similar to San Francisco. And only people that got a trust fund can live there, or people that have been there a long time. Anyway, the open space environment around the city ensures that you have lots of hiking, lots of trails, and it's a lot like Golden Gate in the sense that there's this really big green area right around your neighborhood and urban environment. And that's one of the things, where am I going with this, Mark? Stop.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just
reason. The thing about open space that's pertinent to the story is I work for this agency that has a bunch of houses they've inherited when they purchased the land, the ring around the city. So it's kind of nice as a worker there. It's kind of, you have to jump through some bureaucratic hoops, but you can rent a place very inexpensively and stay in it while you work for the agency. And you're there as a caretaker is what they call it, which means that you respond to any emergencies. Public stops in once in a while, they ask questions. And it means you're really highly visible as well. It means anything you do, there's people that are looking at it. I try not to leave tequila bottles out in the kitchen. But the rent I pay there is, it's by San Francisco standards and Boulder standards, it's pretty hard to tell you this on fact film. I pay $250 a month rent, but I have to work 20 hours a week as well as a caretaker, which means 20 hours a month. What I do is I have to fix windows and do handyman stuff that anybody that lives in a house probably would do anyway. Mowing the grass. Had a lot of grass. It's not like San Francisco where you probably can get by with a push mower. And I rent this house, and it has a little barn where there's some storage, and I've got a little workshop. It's pretty nice. It's built in 1897, and there's about 17, 18 rooms in it. 3 big rooms, 3 bedrooms, funky little kitchen. I don't have a dishwasher, and I don't have to worry about my sponges. I leave my dishes in the sink for like a week at a time. I have a girlfriend now, and she kind of asked me, Jeff, how can you live like that? And I say, well, I'm used to it. The sponge, I had the same sponge for about 1.5 years actually, and I usually replace them when the stuff on the one side is like Velcro that you can scrape off the crusty food that happens when you let it dry. You can take that and you can basically, when it comes apart and starts going down the sink, I get a new one. They cost $1 too, man. They're expensive. So anyway, the household is kind of neat. I have a guy that I work with, used to work with. Now actually, he's got a better job and better wages. But I have one guy that I live with there. 2 bachelors in a house can get away with murder, I'd say. And we have competition to, like I just, on this trip to San Francisco, I was racing. I didn't have time to do stuff. Every trip to San Francisco, I'm racing. I never have enough time. I left some salmon, some dishes, a couple things of chicken soup. All these things really stink if you leave them for a week. So I left all this stuff in the sink, and I know when I get back it'll be there because my roommate will take it upon himself to make sure that he doesn't do my dishes. And I do the same thing. I mean, I'll take it, if he leaves a spaghetti pan that's all crusty, it's got soap in it. I guess that means that he's going to come back to it eventually and wash it. But, it'd be just as easy to wash it, but it's an attitude thing. And so I guess when I came here and I saw the sponge incident occur, it was kind of a surprise to me that they could worry about a sponge. I'm more worried about doing dishes, period. In the house itself, it's kind of nice because it's rural, so you're out in the country a lot, and there's a lot of space, and you have enough space in the house with 2 people that you don't have to worry about really infringing on each other unless you got music real loud. When you have 7 people living in a house, I could see that could be more complicated. Definitely, people come and go in different hours. And Well, there's this one girl here, and it was this was like the second or third visit. I can't remember her name, but she was basically one night I saw her with the guy who's Spanish, and he came out in a house coat, and she was laughing, and I was like, well, they don't know who I am. I better just kind of disappear back to Mark's room. And so next day there was a Russian guy or something here, and I was like, it's a different guy. He's got the same bathrobe on, and I was like, what's going on here? This girl must really go through men. And then I realized that I shouldn't even ask about stuff like this because I'm just a guest and should mind my own business. But I kind of made a mental note not to wear that bathrobe. All right, that's cheesy. Well, that wasn't the Scottish guy. This was I know that there was a Spanish guy the first night. He was kind of like a kind of a Ricardo type guy, greased back hair a little bit, looked like GQ kind of guy. And then the next night there was this other guy there, and I figured she had a lot of friends. That was kind of the way it was. I don't know, Mark's probably seen some things. I know when he had his screenplay that he was working on, there was some mention of the margarine scene, for example, where I was wondering if that was one of the people in the house, and I figured it was probably Mary.
I have to.
Talking, is this running? I gotta just.
It doesn't make a difference when it's running. I'm gonna shut it off.
Oh my God.
Well, I don't want to get in trouble here. They were laughing. Well, I was coming in the house late, and they were laughing away like you knew they were just having sex or something. And it was like, well, you definitely as a guest you want to be discreet and kind of go away. And that was cool, but it was just to see a different guy doing the same thing the next night is what was like. That was stay away from this girl. So anyway.
Okay.
I want to go into the. Well, you tell me where you want me to go. I know.
No. What? Go ahead.
The plaque is what I know. That's fresh in my mind.
Yeah. So start with the first time you're coming here, coming up the street to the porch.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Okay.
Well, first time, I guess I learned about San Francisco is you can never park here. You drive around 25 minutes looking for it, and that's when Mark has solved this by not having a car. I probably would have the same attitude because even if you find a spot, you got to move it. They have this little racket where they have signs that every other Thursday except on Lent, you have to move your car. So you can't leave it in one spot, and there's no garages, or they rent garages for $600 a month. So anyway, we got out of the car and we were about 5 or 6 blocks walking with our backpacks and come up to the house, and there's a plaque on the house. And I noticed this, and this is one of the things that kind of, when you're first seeing something, you see it really new. You see everything, and you start making notes about stuff that doesn't make any sense. But there was a brass plaque on the steps, and as you come up, it was covered with ivy, and it said the Laughing Hands Institute. And I'm like, what is that? That's kind of, it's kind of cool. It sounds kind of zen-y a little bit.
Can I stop you?
Yeah.
It's the Laughing Man Institute?
Got it. Laughing Hands is actually a press. That's a mental, in fact, I know why I said that.
So maybe we can do that.
Yeah, I'll do that whole thing again.
Not the whole thing,
Go.
just you saw.
Yeah. As I was coming up the steps, I noticed there's kind of ivy hanging over the whole thing. I noticed a plaque that said the Laughing Man Institute. And I wonder what that is. It's kind of like maybe Zen or a little bit of something.
You know what, I just want to start you over because the first time you said it, you were like, I saw this plaque.
Yeah.
And the second time you said it, I saw this plaque. So if you could just get that.
Yeah, I got it.
Back. Okay.
All right. Well, when I came up, we had found a place to park, and I was pretty thrilled about that. So I had my backpack, and we're stumbling up, and you see new stuff the first time you come into town. It's like everything that you see is fresh. And as I was coming up the steps, kind of neat, it's like there's a cement little concrete pillars, and I was coming up the steps, and I noticed this ivy hanging over a brass plaque, kind of like what you see, like a war plaque. I was going, what is this? And it's just a historic building. And it said the Laughing Man Institute had a little bit of rubbing to it. It looked like it had been there a little while. And I didn't even think anything of it. I just figured that there was a sign, there's probably a business here or something like that. So it's kind of interesting. I talked to Mark. I asked him about that. And this was probably the 3rd or 4th visit. And the plaque was gone. And I was like, I was sure I had seen this when I first came here. And I had heard, first time I was here, they talked about how that in the 70s there was an actual kind of a commune type place here. And I guess it was the Laughing Man Institute. So I went out there and I was showing it to Mark, and all there was these marks with some glue that wasn't even there, and Mark wasn't sure that it had ever been there. So it was kind of a thing where I was worried that I was losing my mind. It wasn't important at all at the time, and I can't see why I would make something like that up. Who knows? So anyway, I went out there and sure enough, pulled the ivy, and there's a little bit of these marks with the glue, but they could have been from anything. But I'm still sure I saw this plaque, and if it was in a dream, it seems like that kind of minutia is not something that you would bother with. So I'm taking it as fact. I'd like to know.
Where did it come from?
Again, I don't think I did.
No, that was great. I'm curious as to what was that about? What's happened with the plaque?
We don't know. We're not even.
Someone just glued it on your house. And that
No. Let me try one part because I do know that's important. Coming up the steps, I noticed this plaque, and the thing that was kind of interesting is overhanging with ivy, and there's a little inset in these nice brown pillars or column, and the insets are little squares set back about a half inch, and it looked like something like a historic register sign or something from World War II. I was curious. It said the Laughing Man Institute, so what is that? Probably kind of zany thing. So, if I start cutting myself, Mark, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
You can't do that. I see this. See, it's not going to make sense. Well, the first time I was here, I had seen this plaque, but it kind of is like a lot of things. You just kind of file it away as something you've seen. I've walked past it a couple dozen times coming back and forth. And it wasn't until the third visit when I was here that Mark was telling me about that there was this kind of like a commune, I guess, that had lived in this house. And I think there was one of the people that was still here knew about these guys. And so I'm talking about the plaque, and Mark said, God, I've never noticed this plaque. And I said, well, come on, I got to show it to you. So I went down and, looking at it up where the ivy is, and the plaque wasn't there. It was like, I'm going, am I losing my mind? And there were these glue marks, kind of like a trace of if somebody had glued something to it. So there was enough there to know that I was pretty sure I was right. But, I'm getting old. I couldn't remember for sure. And then Mark he said he'd never seen it. And I go, well, if you've been driving, or if you've been walking back and forth past these steps, figure 365 days times 7 days, 7 years, that's a couple, maybe 2,000, 3,000 times Mark could have seen that plaque. So if he didn't see it, maybe it wasn't there. But I'm pretty sure it was. The question, I went back when I looked at that, and I was telling Mark the story later again. We were talking about making this film and going, how would I make, or why would I make something like that up, or where would that come from unless it was fact? Because it's like, it is something that's pretty odd to think was there or wasn't there. I guess I lost what I wanted to do. There was something
let's
good.
forget about this.
A dream here a little bit. San Francisco is the mecca of the universe in terms of the art world, and it's not New York, contrary to popular belief. I make silkscreen posters, and I'm real heavily influenced by both old graphics and kind of the current scene that's going on out here. And they've got Frank Kozik, Psychic Sparkplug, a guy, Ryan Orion, who does some really nice work. Just basically, it's the same kind of stuff as, that's bad. The silkscreen work is, first time I came out here, it was like kind of more of a research, a recon mission. Whereas we'll have the seats go up and down, Mark. This will be good. I'll just keep doing this the entire time. All right. The first time I came out here, it was kind of fun. It was kind of a recon mission. I was thinking about, I've been working on making silkscreen posters in Boulder, Colorado, which is not the art capital that San Francisco is. And I was thinking it's time for me to branch out and kind of see what's going on. And there's a lot happening in San Francisco. One of the most famous guys doing the silkscreen work is Frank Kozik, and he's kind of using the fluorescent colors, real bright posters. He had moved up from Austin, and I kind of was making a pilgrimage. I wanted to meet him and see what was going on out here, and I had this idea that there might be some galleries and places that would be into the stuff from Denver. There are a few people that were actually, this is 93, that were making screens and kind of a unique little niche, not accepted by the art world or anything, but figured if it was not going to be accepted, San Francisco was one place that might accept it. So I came out here first time as a recon mission and just wanted to see what was out here more than anything. From there, kind of got, the house, it was really fun coming here. It was a comfortable experience, and cool people were here. Met a guy, Dave, that does magic work. And it was just like, well, shoot, it's fun talking to Mark. He's into film. I'm learning about this stuff. And it's kind of a, if I were in Boulder, had the same kind of thing going on, it'd be pretty cool. So I came out here a couple more times, and each time, it's nice. Give Mark a call, tell him what's going on. And, we usually plan on having some fun here, and then I take off for the day and disappear. Mark never knows whether I'm going to give him a call or what's going on. But I get to stay in the guest bed. They have a pretty cool setup. I guess the guest bed has had more guests in it than most bed and breakfasts, but the guest bed's upstairs, and it's by Ellie's room, and it's kind of nice. I guess it makes sense if you had 7 people living in a house that you'd have to have some place for people and their girlfriends or families to stay. Excuse me. So anyway, get to stay in the guest bed. It's comfortable, and it's kind of a nice thing. They have bathrooms they kind of interesting. I guess this old style houses. There's a bathroom that's just a bathroom, and there's a bathroom that's the shower and a bathroom. And I guess in the house there are 3 or 4. Where am I going with this?
I don't know.
I already went through the yellow issue. We don't need to do that again. That's where I was going.
Talk about making posters.
Yeah, well, I make these silkscreen posters. It's all computer work, and I draw something on a napkin, and you get something you like, you can scan it, bring it in, turn it into vectors, and before you know it, you can stretch it and play with your drawing quite a bit. Put all this out on acetate and then make photo emulsion silk screens, and you have to register all the colors. So you actually have to take, you do red, green, whatever, and kind of bring them so that they line up, and then you end up with your product. It's really fun. Poster thing again is, it's kind of a niche, or it's not really accepted in the art world. You make something for an event, and it has it's kind of fun because it's about the time. It's about the music. I have to know what the band is about, and trying to draw or trying to get something that really relates specifically to what they're about. And it's kind of a small group of people that are gonna know this. They're gonna look at it and they'll get the joke. They'll know what it's about, or they'll take the image and they'll be able to relate to the music. And sometimes I try to draw. If they're kind of like, if they're cute girls, I try to draw them with aplomb. So anyway, and the cute girl thing gets me into trouble sometimes. In Boulder's as fascist as Berkeley is. I've had a couple people accuse me of using women as sexism to sell rock and roll. Oh, great idea! Why didn't I think of it? But there's only one band that ever got pissed, and I was bummed out about this. Don't take this the wrong way, but Babes in Toyland, I had drawn a really sexy girl. They're like a grunge band. Grunge is dead already. It's history, thank God. But the girls were kind of gnarly, and they played the 3-chord kind of rock. A lot of angst, a lot of men hating going on. And I had drawn this really cute girl on a poster popping out of the paper, like kind of like a centerfold plus, a little more to it. And I thought, this is a good one. I really like this. I did them in a bunch of different colors, and they're up all around town. Well, one of my buddies works in the record store across from this club I do work for. It's the Fox Theater. He said that the girls had come in, and they were really pissed. They wanted to know who had drawn this, and they didn't like it at all. They were mad at it. And the one girl came and she ripped one down. She tore it off the wall, actually, and ripped it up. And she said, this is wrong. This is using sex. And what Martin said, my friend Martin, he told me this after the fact. He said, they were all butt ugly, and they were pissed. They didn't look anything like their promo photo. I'll go, if we use that, I'm dead. But
That's great. Wow.
So,
Keep going, yeah.
So anyway, on that one, I don't want anybody to get mad at me. I never want that. I guess I realized that some people, the intentions of what's going on are different than what they know. And I think I learned something there is that you kind of got to look at stuff askance and understand what somebody's really doing before you react. And I've learned. So that now I basically draw girls clothed. If they have big breasts, that's okay, but as long as they're clothed, I'm off on it. Well, these are some of the posters that I work on. I thought I'd explain a little of this because it is relevant to the reason I come out to San Francisco. And this one is the Merman. It's kind of a fun little space guy, and just drew this on a napkin. And by scanning it and bringing it into the computer, you can do all kinds of things to it, so it's kind of fun. And there's a mate to that. You know, it's kind of, this is another surf band, Man or Astor Man, and it's kind of fun. They're little play kind of, you know, stuff from my childhood, but they're also things that are current. You know, it's great to see surf music kind of coming back again, and or it's been back. It's never really gone away. Again, Merman is one that's from San Francisco, so they're a great band, psychedelic surf, if there is such a thing. And there's some other stuff here. This is related to the story in some ways. This is kind of my warped view of the world. This one here, Tad, is this big 300-pound grunge rocker. But in Boulder, we've got, same thing you probably got here, we've got all these clone frat boys. And I was reading the Sunday paper, and there was a picture that just, it hit me the wrong way. It looked like it was a Siamese frat boy. So I immediately grabbed, you know, a little piece of paper and felted pen, and I'm drawing this thing out. And before I knew it, I had exactly what I wanted. This was one that was pretty popular around town. It's fun because I put these up on all kinds of kiosks, and they're in all the record stores, and you know, I get my free CDs. But it was kind of fun because this one was one people were taking down. And I was playing around because I made a couple different versions of this one. This will show you the fun of silkscreening is that you can experiment with colors. So I've got nice frat boy here, and then we've got racially correct stereotype for, you know, kind of wanted to branch out a little bit here, and it's fun. I'm just playing around here. And then I got a little carried away on this one. But that's the play of silkscreening is fun. These are up and they're gone. It's pretty ephemeral as an art form. Again, 20 years from now, they'll be around. This is the best one here. The latest is always the best one. That's the way it works with a lot of artists. Is, you know, you put your heart into something, you're working on it, and it's cool for a period of time, and you move on. This hasn't even happened yet. You know, this is a couple weeks out. I got a promo picture of the girls in the mail, and I figured I like this stuff. They're not sleeping with the Beastie Boys, but they're connected with them, and it's kind of a nice, a little bit of hip hop mix with almost a lounge kind of stuff. And so I got the girls' faces pretty good, drew it out, and wanted to make them sexy. Didn't want to make them too sexy. I took a hit for that once before, so I played around, and there's a red one, and there's a yellow one, and you know, they're kind of fun. I'm hoping I'll meet the girls at the show. One of the things that I get to do with doing this is you get to play little ephemeral rock star kind of stuff and get them autographed, and you know, that's fun for me. It's like I'm a big fan. So anyway, with the girls, one of the things that's fun with this one is I've taken a little bit of a hit for being sexist in how I draw girls. So I decided this time around that, you know, I got to make them all kind of, you know, more realistic, and that's one of the things that this poster here, this one's based on my boss, and this kind of hard, and this was up around town. There were a lot of people that they basically they knew this was my boss, and they think I have a problem here. Satan is a woman, but this was a fun one. And it's fun to kind of play in joke stuff and do things like that. And this one's pushing it a little bit. I can see why somebody would think that I'm a warped and weird guy, even though I'm not. And just to prove that I'm not sexist, good band here, Guided by Voices. This girl's got no breasts at all. She's based on a girl that was working for me. And this girl, Mindy, knew it. She's a really intelligent girl, real lanky and skinny, and kind of, you know, all girls are pretty. I don't know what else to tell you, Mark, the helpful filmmaker. Yeah, so it was kind of fun. Right after I left, I think it was the first or second visit here from Mark, I was working on this Tad poster, and I just finished the drawing, and it's like, you know, we've been talking about what the hell is Jeff trying to do. So I wanted to fax it to him. There's kind of a deal here, you know, Ellie has the fax machine, and she's real good about sharing all this stuff. And it never occurred to me that, you know, I shouldn't fax something like this. Probably one of the girls, maybe, you know, I wouldn't have faxed that. But, so I faxed a black and white version of this Tad poster, the two-headed guy, and yeah, I called Mark. I said, hey, Mark, you better go get this fax. I was laughing. It was pretty fun to, you know, just, it's quick, and, you know, he's got this thing. He'll see what's going on. So I figured he'd just get a kick out of it. He put it up on the fridge, though. It's kind of fun. Put it up on the fridge, and it was gone within an hour. It's, I guess Ellie didn't like it. She thought it was kind of warped or twisted, and, you know, Siamese people or something. But, you know, come on, it's just a poster. And it's, I thought the message that it had was pretty clear. That's one of the things I make mistakes on is my message and what I take others are going to read, you know, some people, you know, they're not going to get that. So, you know, here we have a two-headed frat guy, and they're pretty much a dime a dozen in Boulder. You're lucky in San Francisco. I guess they ran most of the frats out of the city. Is that?
Okay, go ahead.
Well, one of the things that came out of the first visit when I was out here was Mark was working on this film Acid Beach, and he told me about it, and I thought, God, this is pretty cool. And I realized, God, he's been working on this since 1984. That's a long time. You know, I recognize now cost of materials for silkscreen is pretty minimal compared to costs for making a film. And I wanted to get involved in this. I thought, well, the poster thing is fun. You know, Mark, I'll make you a poster. Standard Jeff stuff. You know, let's get ourselves over committed just for the hell of it. So anyway, Mark was into it, and you know, I left and went home, and it's like, this will be really fun. So I got a package in the mail about 2 weeks later. It had some of the stills, publicity shots, and Mark's an artist. I mean, he's already got it, already figured out what he wanted. And he had drawn it out. He had the text and the font and the size of the font and the color and the dimension, and it was like, well, this will be cool. I mean, I want to do this, and let's see what I can come up with. So I scanned all the stuff, put it together, faxed him a couple things, and wrote up all the copy and type. And at the time, I think Mark was just learning about computers and how you use them. And it's kind of like I put this thing together, and I'd never worked with somebody that was that control-oriented, and he wanted everything just like the way he had conceived it. And I was going, what's the fun of that? And he's kind of like that sponge, man. So I felt like, you know, I'm helping, but if I have to do this way, that's what he wants, I should do it. So we got it, and I actually liked what I had put together finally. I think Mark was right. Sometimes my ideas of what's happening versus somebody else's, you know, it's like anything. It's hard to figure out what the right thing is. So anyway, I put this thing together, and I was pretty psyched on it, and then Mark was coming out to Boulder, and this is one of his trips out there. And we decided to screen it so he'd get a handle on what it takes doing that, and it was kind of fun. You know, it's like a good idea. We all went to breakfast and came back, and Dave was helping on this too. So we're out there getting yellow and blue ink on. And I don't know if you can see this in the camera, but we've got the actual picture right here. Actually, Mark framed it up. It looks pretty good. And you've got a scene of the girls. The Searchlight one was great. I didn't even know where that had come from. Subsequently watching the movie and looking at it, it's in the graffiti scene in the park, and that was, you know, probably some kid's version of, you know, what it's like in San Francisco when mommy and daddy run away, and the cops come look for you, and there's a helicopter there with a searchlight, and oh, wow, that's actually much better than anything I'll ever be able to do. So I was stoked on this. We put it together, and I was kind of like, this is cool. I never worked on a film before, never worked with this. It was a fun combination of using the techniques that I used for the music stuff and kind of mixing it up. And I hope to do some more of that in the future. So it was fun. Next time I came out, Mark was going to another festival. Mark's the Eternal Festival goer. One of these festivals is gonna happen, maybe. He sent this film out, and he was going to New York this time. It's like, God, that's a big deal. And we talked about making some big posters, and they're one of the things with silkscreen is there's limitations on size. It's kind of hard to make something bigger than 36 by 48 or so. So Mark found a place that would Xerox these things real large and made a pretty cool copy, and we decided we were going to spray paint them to make them have the same kind of colors as the rest of the movie posters. So I got all retentive and made a screen essentially, or made a stencil. So I got all retentive. I made the stencil out of cardboard by taking one of the big Xeroxes and just doing taking an X-Acto knife. Like, I'm not doing this well. Try it again. Yeah, I got all. I wanted to help here. I had an idea, so I got the poster and I put one on top of a piece of cardboard and cut out a stencil that had all the lettering for Acid Beach, and then one that had some of the shapes. And Mark's always prepared. He had spray paint, had blue and yellow spray paint he'd already got, and fluorescent stuff. And so we tried it out. It worked pretty good. We're down in the little basement of the house, and it's kind of interesting is I'd never even knew there was a basement in this house. And then I started thinking, God, with the rent prices, you can almost rent this out. And they have old flower pots and all kinds of stuff in the basement. And I'm spray painting away, and it's a pretty strong smell down there. Kind of looking around, and Mark came down, and was the first time that we had the conversation again about this Laughing Man, the Institute, the sign. And sure enough, in the back room, way in the back, was a plywood sign that said Laughing Man Institute. And that made me sure that that plaque was there, even though we still didn't know for sure. Anyway, Mark went off to New York and became the successful filmmaker that he is. 9. When I first came out here again, one of the things I remember is kind of silly, and we were talking about this the other night. I came out here and I'm sitting on the couch kind of taking a minute before we headed out to dinner, and there's this argument going on in the kitchen. It seemed ridiculous. There's a girl in there, and she was arguing, and she had her voice raised about using the wrong sponge, and evidently the other guy in the house had used a sponge he wasn't supposed to use to wash some dishes. And it was a big deal. And this girl, I learned her name was Ellie. She's a nice girl. She was saying basically, you don't respect the household rules. We had an agreement. We had a meeting about this. I'm going, God, what do they have here? Like little, you have to have a meeting every Wednesday night, and everybody has to take their shoes off, and you basically decide what you're going to do, who's going to take the trash out, who's going to vacuum, and whether or not the light switches need to be dusted every Thursday. So, I kind of go, wonder what this is all about. Oh, I don't know. I got up, I went to get a glass of water. Sure enough, there's a sign on the sink. The sign says, yellow is. It said, I'll try this again. I got up. I want to get a glass of water.
Yeah.
You got that? I was sitting on this couch, kind of sitting back. We were getting ready to go to dinner. Reading, I think it was a Chronicle, just kind of dodging through, trying to figure out if there are any shows. And there's this argument going on in the kitchen. I don't think they knew I was there. It was kind of trying to be the inobtrusive house guest. And they're raised voices. There's a girl there kind of saying, you don't respect the household rules. You're not supposed to use that sponge. And I'm going, what's the deal here? And the guy's going, well, it's just a sponge. And this girl's going, well, we have a household meeting, and I thought we all agreed that we wouldn't use the other sponge. I'm going, man, that's retentive. What the hell is this household all about? It's like, sounds like a control place or something. And she said, well, the pink is for the sink, and the yellow's mellow, something like that. And I was like, I guess I better be careful when I use a sponge. I use the right sponge. The conversation was, I don't know, it was uncomfortable. It was like when I was a kid and my parents would be yelling about something I didn't understand, and I was hoping that this was not what the weekend was going to be like. I also realized that, people have rules, and you got to have rules when you have a bunch of people living in the house. And I just figured this house had a lot of rules. When I went to the bathroom, you can use it from there. There were a lot of rules here, and some of them were unsaid. I don't want to do that whole thing again. Does he make you do this?
No, I won't do this.
Yeah, sure.
The thing about the argument in the kitchen was I didn't really know these people, and I didn't know what was going on. There's a girl, older a little bit, and she's raising her voice, just telling this guy that he didn't respect her about the sponge, and that they had made these household rules up. I guess they have like a town meeting. You got to take your shoes off. Everybody comes there, and they basically just decide who's going to do what to keep the house working. And some of that makes sense. So this girl Ellie, I learned her name. She's yelling at this other guy Larry that he doesn't get it. He doesn't respect the household rules. Larry, he's pretty vocal, and I was kind of going, yeah, go Larry. He says, it's just a fucking sponge. And I was like, yeah, he's right. I wonder if they know I'm sitting here, God. So I just I got up to get some water, and there was a sign there on the sink. And the sink's got this little thing, if it's pink, it's sink, and yellow, it's mellow, something like that. And they had other stuff like that in the house. There was a chalkboard that had little rules about things, and the kitchen's pretty small, and there's lots of stuff everywhere, and there are rules about where to put the stuff, and take the papers out on Thursday, fold the bags twice. I don't know, things. first came up here, you can still see it. There's like blue marks. It's all covered by ivy now, but there was a sign here. It's a big brass plaque, and it said the Laughing Man Institute. And I don't know, that's not a lot to go on. We could probably get forensic experts to check out if that's really glue or what that is. But anyway, the sign was there. I know it was.
That I normally do anywhere else because I grew up with his father who was when we go on vacations, crack of dawn, wake up, go see all the monuments.
You can talk. I'm gonna pan over to this tree.
Okay.
Yeah, I know the same type.
Yeah.
Enforced.
Oh yeah. Like you take it to all the state capitals, and one capital looks like any other capital. But yeah, a little while ago I was in Seattle, and I've known them some friends who we all agreed like crazy. And every right after lunch I'd take a nap, and before I go to dinner take a nap or watch some TV or just walk around. It's really good. I'm sure there's a lot of great things in Seattle, but it felt better. Yeah,
you share the enforced vacation stuff. It's like, all right, we've seen this, we've gone to Holland, we've done this. Why are we doing this? It's because that's what other people do on vacations, or is it so you can tell your friends we did this? That's fun.
Yeah, I always wanted to ask my dad, like, well, why do I have to see it? Why? And I didn't know, like, is it part of my education? Are you trying to teach me something, or is it that you truly want to see it? You want to force it on us? Yeah.
And most likely it's not that.
Yeah.
You probably want to see it.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe there was another last man.
It's like in a car scene, so it's the opposite from the side of the paper sign. I thought that just
Laughing at. So how do you see it under all that ivy? Do you think it maybe ought to get signed?
all I did before I got moving, I looked at it, and when I saw it, I saw the sign, this is scary. This is impossible. Almost possible.
I wonder if the landlord just decided to take it down or maybe.
Wasn't there, I was like, that's when I wondered.
Yeah. Yeah, what a great house.
Yeah, it is a cool place. It's like easy to recognize.
Yeah.
It's like one of the things when you're wandering around, you don't know where you are. You just block of these ridiculous planners and all that stuff. So this house is no matter how lost you are, you can see it.
And like, I remember one dinner Dave Barada was talking about the architecture, explaining the architecture principle. And I just don't hear that at any other dinner.
Yeah.
It was just great. It was just,
That's a conversation stuff I think Dave organized. We just did. It's the conversations. Even where I am in Boulder, it seems like you're doing art stuff, so there's a need for conversations.
yeah, everyone's involved in something. really is stuff that people glad to hear they can do Yeah, I tried to landlord bought out the land, you know, not, I'm not trying to get a